Okay, so today I'm going to perform a basic shock air can service. Probably one of the simpler services that you can perform on your suspension, but a valuable service. I'd recommend doing it every 6 months, just to keep the shock really nice and smooth, keep all the seals nice and lubricated, and protect this shock body that compresses in and out of the air can itself. First and foremost, very important, remove the air from the shock. You're going to need a shock pump. If you haven't got a shock pump, you're not going to be able to perform this service, because you do need a high pressure shock pump to put the air back in. You don't need it to remove the air, but I'd recommend removing the air with the shock pump as well, because you can take a note of your shock pressure. So if this is correctly set up for you, your sag on your bike with your weight and your riding kit, etc., make a note of that shock pressure, because that's the pressure you need to put back in once you've reassembled the shock. So all the shock pumps have got like a little bleed valve there, just to let the air out. You can see the air going out because the shock body is retracting back into the air can. Okay, set that aside, don't need that for a bit yet. It is worth just making sure that every last little bit of air is out of there. You can use a valve core removal tool to take that valve core out, and then you're 100% sure that there's nothing else trapped in there. If you remove that air and that shock body pulls all the way back into there, your air's bypassed into the negative air. Now you've got to be careful if that happens. So if it's what's called sucked back in, you can perform this service yourself, but when you undo this air can, that's going to blow off there because of all this air that's trapped in. One of the internal seals will have gone, and the positive air in here will have gone into the negative air. So even though you release all that, there's still a lot of negative air left inside here, and as you undo this and release this seal, it will blow off that air can. Now the other thing to do when you're removing this air can, quite often, now that air can will probably fit over this shock hardware here, but this is having new hardware fitted anyway, so I've removed the bushing. This is all brand new hardware to go in here, but you will need to probably remove this lower hardware. Again, you need a hardware shock eyelet hardware extractor tool to get that out without doing any damage. Now, if that's sucked back in and you want to perform this service yourself, I'd recommend sticking a rag through there, so that when this does bang and blow, and wear earmuffs as well, it can't come flying straight off. You need something soft in there for it to fire onto. This doesn't need that, so there's no problem with this. This is in perfect working order. This is just an interim service on this particular shock. So I've released the air. Double, triple, quadruple check that, because like I say, you don't want to undo this cam, because this is only hand tight there, so you don't want to undo this and there'll be air traps in there, because that will make one nasty awful bang, and you know, you could be in danger of it causing some damage to you and your eyes, etc. So you know, very important. Yeah, dead easy. Undo your air can by hand. There might be some fluid in there. I've got a tray beneath that, but you know, you just need a bit of paper towel at hand, just in case. You can just slip that straight off the shock body. Dead easy, dead simple. This, like I said, is just a basic air can service. If your shock's not working properly, or making that nasty squelchy noise, it needs a more thorough service, which is the stripping of this shock body and releasing the nitrogen gas that's charged inside there. Bit more of a sophisticated service. I'd recommend you seeking specialist advice for that one. You can service RockShox shocks. They do provide internal service kits, and they provide the tools to service inside there, because you do need some specialist depth setting tools to reset the height of the internal floating piston that's inside there. Plus you'll need some proper shock oil, probably 7-weight or 3-weight oil depending on your shock. You also need instructions really of how to reset that and depth of how to reset that internal floating piston. Fox don't tend to supply those openly to Joe Average, whereas RockShox do. You can get all their servicing catalogues up, and they do sell all their servicing parts. So if it's a Fox, I'd recommend sending it to a service centre like Sprung Suspension or TF Tuned. I don't service Fox shocks apart from this basic service because I don't have the tools. I can't get the tools to do the internals. Right, so you've got that taken apart now. Now, if you do this regularly, just as a lubrication service now, I'd recommend only changing the seals probably every 12 months with good use. So you could basically give all these internal seals a good old clean up. You can remove them to clean them. Give everything a good clean, and then if you're happy with that, you can literally lube everything back up and put it all back together, and that'll just keep it running smoothly then for another 6 months. But I recommend these seals are in need of a change, so I'm going to replace all the seals in this tutorial. I get Fox do their float air can seal kit, which is about 24 quid I think for their seal kit. Sprung Suspension, sprungsuspension.com, you can buy that kit for 15 quid. It's identical. They have the kit specially made up for them, so it's most probably the same people that make their kit as make it for Fox, but you're probably paying for the branded name, whereas these guys cut out the middleman. So yeah, 15 quid for a full set of seals there. So you get all the seals and all the glide rings. Now these encompass most Fox float air cans and shocks. So there's probably too many of the bigger seals unless you've got a different air can to this one. This one will only need the one of these bigger seals, which is for the where the actual shock air can meets the screws into the top there. Okay. Right. So what I do now is, again, you can remove that scraper seal there, the top one, just by hand, dead easy. Pull that out. I'll just keep all these seals away from the oil seals, because this is going to get a bit of dirt and debris on there. Now you will need a seal pick to get these seals out of here, but be very careful if you're using a steel pick. You can get these nylon picks actually, to be a little bit more cautious. The only thing with the nylon ones is with them a bit softer, they just don't get as good a purchase on the seals as a metal one. So a nice quality sharp pick, just prick that seal, and then without touching the sides, I tend to just, well, I was going to push it through, but it's stuck onto the pick there. You prick that already. Don't reuse that seal if you've stuck a pick through it. Try and get it out without doing that sort of damage to it if you want to reuse those seals. And these glide rings that hold the seals in place, again, you can just prick them and push them out. Try not to. It's imperative that you don't scratch inside there with this pick, because that's going to cause problems with your air can retaining the high pressure air inside there. Okay, so I've just discarded those seals. I don't want those. These ones, just take these off by hand, give it a good press together, and then just peel that seal out of there. Fling that. These glide rings, they've got a split in them, so they come off dead easy. Now just a bit of isopropyl alcohol. So get your tissue paper, your rags, give that a bit of a spray, give that a good clean so you've got this internal shaft. You can inspect this for damage as well. If quite often if you've got this squelching thing going on, there might be a bit of damage to this shaft, and air's getting into this oil that's inside there, which is causing you squelching. Again, you probably need to seek some specialist advice. Your shock might be irreparable if this shaft's damaged or this coating's worn off there. So you might need to have that. I don't know if it might not be worth the sum of its parts replacing it, to be quite honest with you. It might be just a bit of a throwaway. and replace with a new shock. But again, if you seek some specialist advice off Sprung or TF Tuned. Right, you've got a seal inside this can here. Again, very carefully. We don't want to be scratching anything. Get that out of there. Very important seal, because that seal seals when the air can screws on to the actual shock itself. Now from your kit, I think it's the biggest one. Yeah, so I'll fling that. So it's the biggest one we need for there. You need these 3. These are for the air can itself, these 2. That's the wiper seal. Need that one. That is for the that's the sag O-ring. So set that to one side. These 3 are for different air cans, so they're not of any use to this particular shock. Okay, right. So alcohol degreaser, whatever it is you're using. I prefer isopropyl. It does the job, nice and cheap. Okay, now the only suspension fluid that you need for this service, I use for Fox shocks. I do use their own Fox float fluid. I sell this stuff in little 10ml bottles. I bottle it up into small convenient bottles because you don't need it really. You probably need about 5ml for a service. So that's the stuff I use. You can use suspension specific grease on the seals, like I showed before in a Fox service, shrimp butter for all these seals, but you do need some liquid, some high viscous liquid suspension oil fluid for inside the air can as well. So I've removed the seals from the air can. Let's give that a good spray with some isopropyl. I'll give that a clean inside, because you can see sort of it's like some dirty, grimy, grubby, old lubricant inside there. So give that a good clean inside there. I do tend to use the plastic pick just to get into these grooves, because I don't want to do any scratching, like I say, inside there. It's imperative you don't scratch inside there. Where the scraper seal is, the initial wiper seal, that's where most of your crud will gather, because that's the bit that's near enough, that's most exposed to the outside elements. Okay, so just inspect that. So that's nice and clean. Okay, so it's just a case of reassembling the seals now. So for each seal, use your grease or your float fluid. Just a little bit's needed on the O-ring seals itself. So we'll get that back. You'll see the little groove that has to go into in there. I like to service shocks in the vise, but you can service these out of the vise quite easily, to be honest. It just makes life just that little bit easier to just to handle the shock if you've got the vise acting as a separate arm. So just get that into the little groove. It should sort of house itself, or it's just a bit awkward. But you must make sure that it does go into the correct groove. Otherwise, when the can engages, I mean, it's pretty foolproof, to be honest. It won't sit properly if it's not in the groove inside there. And then put a little bit of float fluid, extra bit of float fluid around that. I'll probably remove most of that by fitting it. Give that a bit of a lube up with the fluid. Okay. Put a little bit of fluid on that shaft. Just be careful with that little ring, that little washer, and then you've got a little O-ring there. It's like a bottom out bumper. If you're fitting air volume reducer spacers, they tend to click into that part of the shock, so you click them in, so they pass over that shaft and click into place. So if you want to reduce the air volume inside there, so if you're bottoming out and the like, you've got to perform the same service to fit these tokens or these air volume reducers into there anyway. Right, I'm going to put that back in the vise, and I'm going to make sure that the shock can just tilt down that little bit as well, because when I put the fluid back in there, I don't want it spilling out. And then when I screw the air can back on, that's held in place. That float fluid, I'll put some float fluid onto this piston there. That's the piston that moves in and out. So you've got a lot of resistance there because that's under a lot of pressure. There's a piston, this piston inside there. There's oil, and then there's air pushing against the oil, which causes that resistance there. So give that a good lubing up. Now, so you've got these split glide rings, I call them. Pop one of those in, and then again, a bit of fluid on that piston seal there. That just pops straight onto there, dead easy. So don't need any tools. All done by hand. The majority of this work's done by hand. No tools required. Okay, right. This procedure now, where we put these, I'm just going to squirt a bit of float fluid into there, into that. So you've got two grooves for the seals. You've got this first groove, and you've got this outer groove. The outer groove is where the wiper seal goes in, so you put that in last. The inner groove, which is the wider of the two grooves, you've got these two nylon rings. Now these do deform quite easily, so you've got to deform these, so you give them a bit of a squash, and then offer one in, and then push that into that groove. That first one going dead easy. Right, then you've got the seal. Give that a good lubing up with your float fluid. That goes in after that first glide ring. Okay. So push that in there, and you're left with a very small groove now. So it's basically the two glide rings sandwich that seal, and this is where you've got to deform that one again, and again get it into the groove above the seal. So you've got to deform this, and it does look like you're sort of deforming it to the point where it's going to break. It won't break because it's quite strong stuff, but it is a bit awkward just to push it, but it does go in, and once it's gone in, you can see it's a nice flush fit that now, and you're not going to do any damage. Oh, sorry, I'm going a bit high there, aren't I? Yeah, so it's a nice flush fit. You're not going to do any damage by squashing that into there. They're designed to flex like that, so there's no problem. Okay, little bit more fluid. Get that onto the outer scraper seal, wiper seal, dust seal, whatever you call it. That goes in dead easy. Now, give that another squirt, a nice coating of float fluid. Okay, so if you've got the Fox do a ridefox.com. They'll do a manual to show you how to do an air can service, and it will recommend in the air can service that you put a couple of millilitres of float fluid in the air can itself as well. So give that a good coating in there. Don't go mad with that. Like I say, just need a couple of millilitres, and then just give that inside of the air can a good smearing, because when that piston is going in and out of that air can, you know, that just provides that additional lubrication in there for the piston. So you should see a bit of float fluid floating around inside there. So that just keeps it nice and lubricated for the several months that you're going to be riding without obviously servicing it, you know, between services. So dead straightforward. That's all back together now, lubed up. Off of the air can, back onto the this is the shock body. Offer it back onto the shock body. That'll just push straight onto there. He says with a great deal of resistance. Oh, there you go. A bit of resistance. And this is why we've got the shock facing down a little bit now, because you need to get a couple of mils of float fluid now into your air can itself. So you've got fluid in this negative air part of the air can, and then you've got some fluid into this positive part. So that piston seal there has got it's kept nice and lubricated now as this shock's working. We've already lubed up the seal up in the top there, where this part of the air can is going to engage with that seal. Now, to make this easy to get apart, because you've got to try and push this now to get this screwed back on there, which is almost an impossibility whilst it's like that. So a bit of a tip for you now. If your rebound setting set to its fastest, i.e. that shock body can bounce in and out quite quickly, turn your rebound adjust so it goes to its slowest rebound. So basically, when you push your shock body in, it comes out really slowly. And then what I do now is just using a couple of rags actually as a bit of a buffer for my hand, because it can hurt a little bit this if you're not careful. If you push the shock body all the way, so you're not touching the air can as such here now, you're pushing the shock in, and then because it's not rebounding out very quickly, this one is rebounding out a bit quicker than I'd hoped, push it in, and then you just basically screw your shock air can onto those threads, and then you basically screw that back on, screw it on, just hand tight, you know, nice, as tight as you can with your hand. Maybe give it a bit of a clean so your hand's not slipping on the lubricated outer part of the can. Don't use any tools to tighten that up, because you're going to struggle getting it off again once you put it on. Once that's hand tight, it's sealed onto that seal there now. You don't have to worry about it. It's not going to come undone when you're riding. You've got your little sag ring there now, just to give that a bit of a lube. Pop that back on. Right, you're now at a point now where you can turn your. Oh, I forgot to say during the course of this service, I've got I've got it in the completely open setting. If you've got that in your firm setting, you're not going to be able to push that back in there, because that's designed to stop that shock body pushing back in. So keep that on the open setting for the entire service. You can set your rebound adjust and everything once you get back on your bike, but if you know how many clicks of rebound you've got there, then fair enough. And then yeah, it's just a case of reinstalling your hardware, new shock eyelet bushes if that's what you're doing as well. Again, like I say, you're going to need a shock eyelet hardware tool, which you can pick up for about 12 quid. Again, I think the likes of Sprung Suspension and people like that, TF Tune certainly sell them. And then reinflate your shock. Simple as that. That's it. Cheers.